Hello and welcome. With me now is a very special guest, Benjamin P. Dixon of the Like It or Not show. Benjamin, how are you doing?
Doing great, Matt. It is a pleasure to be with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is awesome, man. So I gotta give a quick thank you and a quick shout out before we get going. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, yeah. Do your thing, man.
Okay, our moderator for tonight, Sandy Lovis of the YouTube channel, um, Left of the Box, gave us a shout out on the Majority Report today. She sent in an IM about the interview and Sam read it on the air. So thank you very
Nice.
much for doing that,
Very
Sandy.
nice.
I was actually on there the other night
Oh, really?
or the other day. Yeah, I was on there Friday for a segment and I was looking for a way to interject. I have a YouTube channel
Ah,
and I'm doing interviews now, but
yeah.
I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that was awesome that she did that. It really helped. Here, let's see. Ben, I'm seeing in the chat that your sound is a little low. Is there a way for you to crank that up some?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, I can. Here, let's
I
see.
mean, just feel free to blast it out.
Let's see. Let's see. How about now? Oh, yeah. I can tell the
Sounds
difference. Yeah.
sounds good to me.
There we
Um,
go.
okay, so look, man, you've had me on your show before. You have always shown me a lot of support. So you know that my mission is to promote voices like yours, shows like yours, work like yours through art. Tell us what's your mission
Mm.
and just in your own words, describe the work you do and how you got into it. Give us your origin story while I start in
Ah,
on this drawing.
yeah. My villain origin story. I think a lot of conservatives would see it that way, but no, man. I don't know my mission is honestly to just do my part to bring liberation to everyone. And I think that's really kind of the benchmark. That's my milestone. That's my guidepost. Is whatever we do, if we are not contributing to liberation, then I don't think we're completing our task. Because it's one thing to do the commentary, it's one thing to do the politics, and those things are good, but actually trying to move the ball towards actual change, structural change. So I am pairing my commentary with more political action on the ground level, whether it be organizing, whether it be protesting. So really, just trying to put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah, so do you consider yourself a journalist?
Not anymore. I kind of I thought of myself as a journalist for a while, but as I started getting more and more on the ground, the more difficult it becomes to try to hold yourself to, in my opinion, what should be journalistic integrity. Um, when I'm on the ground, I'm about that action, man. I'm really about moving the dial, and it's hard to be objective when you're decidedly there to move the ball. So now at this point, because there's so much action going on, it's hard for me to consider myself a journalist, because I'm not out there to be fair and balanced. I'm out there to make some change.
Did you always want to do something like this, like along these lines?
Um, You know what? I would have to say yes. I guess I didn't know exactly what would be the mechanism for me to get the work done. And so, I've always had a passion for the people and a penchant for talking. And so it was a just a matter of time before commentary found me, so to speak. But yeah, I would say, yeah, speaking truth to power has kind of always been something I've aimed for.
So are you doing what you were meant to do? Is that how you feel about it?
I think I'm at the entry level of what I was meant to do. I think that we really go through a training period, and sometimes we don't even realize it. Like we really think we're doing the work that we will be doing permanently. And really it's just kind of like a training season. I think this time in politics specifically has been one to train me to deal with the level of hypocrisy and lies and gaslighting that goes on. And we'll see. I'm hoping to expand beyond politics, because there's just so many different fronts that we have to actively be working in. So it's not getting away from politics to try to rebrand and go to a different direction. It's to expand out of politics so that we can complete the work that needs to be done in politics.
That's interesting. Is there so think about what's wrong with mainstream media in terms of what you personally want to change? And now you're sort of talking about this already. So
Mhm.
um maybe hone in on like what's the primary thing you hope to do that is different from mainstream media, whether it's something they're lacking or doing just flat out incorrect.
Yeah, no. Well, I see mainstream media as a threat, not because of their size, but because of how they have clearly operated in bringing this country to where it is. And I think the work that I'm trying to do, not I think, I'm confident that the work that I'm trying to do is to help the people organize as media around that. And what I mean is that we have to get critical mass as the people to be able to set the national narrative, to be able to manipulate the algorithm in the same way that the media companies do now, the social media companies, in addition to media companies. And so I really see them as the barrier to one of the key barriers to liberation is how mainstream media operates, not only in the sense of how they operate in terms of trying to create a both sides ism. They try to make every single story say that there's a left side, there's a right side, there's a moderate side, and that's really not always the case. There's the truth, right? And it's not our fault that the truth has what they used to say a liberal bias. I would say the truth has a progressive bias. And the media is 100% committed to distorting that, obfuscating it, and making sure that the truth is murky. And so I think we have to organize around that as the people to, number one, understand their tools, understand their mechanisms, how they do it, the language, the gaslighting. We need more emphasis on breaking that down so the average person can watch the news and be able to dissect, okay, that's BS, this is gaslighting, et cetera, et cetera. But then also I think we have to organize at a level where we have the capacity to get the word out to ourselves, without the interference of or the need for mainstream media or the interference like what we're dealing with on Twitter. We have to be our own media.
The first time I heard a lefty YouTuber hold Democrats accountable, this is early on, right? So I think everyone who watches people like yourselves, the Majority Report, like I mentioned earlier, have like this embarrassing story of how it all started, right? And so when it first started for me, I was thinking to myself, like, why are they doing that publicly? If they keep talking about
Mm,
Democrats negatively, they're going to ruin
yeah,
all of our chances.
yeah,
But I kept listening, and I realized eventually it's
makes
the
sense.
people they're holding accountable are the ones who are actually ruining everything for everyone and preventing any kind of real progress. And so, what makes you unafraid and dedicated to keeping their feet over the fire, whether it's the media, whether it's politicians, Democrats or Republicans, or maybe it's someone who claims to subscribe to a faith not unlike your own,
Mm,
like
mm.
not in politics, like what makes you unafraid to go after them, so to speak?
Well, because we're running out of time, and I've got kids, and you would think the more, people used to say the older you get, as you grow a family, you get more conservative. That might be true in some aspects, but I'm very radical because I got to leave a planet for these kids. I've got to do my part to make sure that these structural problems that we have now aren't the exact same or worse, when I'm gone. So therein lies my commitment, is because like this is real life. And while it becomes difficult, when your real life also becomes your work, because I think a lot of us, you know, have a fine separation between what is real life and what is our work in this kind of media journalism thing, commentary, political world. They become married very closely, and so honestly, it's a commitment not only to the future, but it's also a commitment to like, this is the work that we do, and if I'm going to be afraid when the rubber meets the road, then what good am I? If so, it routinely becomes this work routinely becomes about confronting any reservation, any hesitation, any type of fear that anxiety that you may have about, getting into this fight or addressing this issue or confronting this person. But nah, man, you just got to eat that and just keep going, because otherwise, you can't get this work done.
So what I've noticed about sticking with the mainstream media for a minute, what I've noticed about people in the mainstream media is that they do not depend on what they report about.
Hmm.
They talk about things that affect people's lives that just flat out do not affect their lives because they're essentially bought off. That's how
That's right.
if you're in that line of work, you're bought off,
Mm,
and that means you're wealthy.
that's right.
So, do you make a point of reporting on stories, and have you always made a point of reporting on stories that affect you on some level? And by you, I mean maybe just like your family and friends, your community,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, man. I mean, and you're absolutely right. The media is, particularly journalists, commentators that we see on television, um, anchors that we listen to on the radio. They're insulated from the real problems. And you know why? I guess that makes sense, because you wouldn't want a hungry journalist working the beat, you know. And then the other thing is, they really, especially a journalist that actually has ability to move the dial. I mean, there's thousands of journalists who are languishing because, well, they are hungry because they don't have the funding and they can't get the funding to go into the areas. And so this goes into discussing the areas and covering the areas that matter. And this goes directly into what you're saying, Matt. It's because they're either paid to look away, or they're underfunded and unable to actually cover the stories that really matter. And we see both of those things bear out in editorial decisions, right? There was a quote by Nancy Pelosi years ago. She said, "Show me your budget, show me your values." And I think we see that in the newsroom. They pour money into commentators who are not really there to move the ball forward, just there to get us arguing. And then all of the other departments that actually would do good investigative journalism, I mean, we've seen just systematically gutted over the last years.
So one of the things that drives me nuts, we got an election coming up, right? The 2024 presidential election, and that'll begin with the primaries, of course. One of the things that makes me crazy is how people in the mainstream media immediately start asking candidates, "Oh, what's your policy?" They know full well 99.9% of those policies will never see the light of day.
That's
They're
right.
they're blowing smoke. They're just saying what you want to hear. And instead, the story really should be people in the media asking these candidates, "How come you guys always say you have all these policies that you want to do and you don't do it? What's
Right.
expose the sham?"
Right.
So I don't want you to, have to talk about stuff in the future or your future plans with your shows and everything in regards to this. If no spoilers, right?
Mhm.
But I'm curious, with the election approaching, beginning with the primaries, do you have a strategy for covering these campaigns and or candidates, or do you go into it sort of free form, see what it gives you, and then work with that?
Yeah, normally I'd go into it free form and see what comes, and work that way, because uh, before before the most recent iteration of my show, I was just a one man guy for everything. And so, recent shows, we have a team, we have the whole squad, we have the producers and stuff. So it became easier to actually strategize. But in the past, like, you know what I mean? I'd have to catch the wave of the algorithm like everyone else and just go search and see what I could find. In terms of coming up to the next set of elections, see, this is where we're working actively to pair media with activism, like really organizing on the ground. Doing a lot of work in the state of Florida, trying to move the ball. If you think of Ron DeSantis coming around the corner, everyone is assuming that he's either going to be the nominee or give Donald Trump a run for his money. Well, there's a lot of unrest in the state of Florida because of Ron DeSantis. And so I think moving towards 2024, using media specifically to strike politically, right? To move the ball and actually organize around. And see, I think going back to a question you asked earlier, you're like, what would we do differently in terms of media? If money was not a thing, and it, always is, if budget was not a problem, we would directly tie organizing to media coverage. In other words, use media to push the drives, use media to push the protest, use media to push the voter registration drive or push people to the polls. Or if nothing else, use our media specifically to push the narratives that matter to us, because that's what we're suffering underneath every single day. The mainstream media and independent media, for that matter, there's a lot of independent media, so-called independent media. They are pushing a narrative. They have pushed a narrative for so long that they don't even have to tell you, or you don't even feel like they're pushing a narrative. You feel like as they discuss these policies, what they're discussing is normal, is the baseline, but it's not. You know, when you hear Marketplace on NPR, that's not a normal baseline. That's financial capitalism at its worst. And we sit back and we watch the horse race, and the same thing with the campaign. We sit back and watch the horse race of the very worst in American politics. And so I'm hoping by 2024 we're able to actually move the dial in terms of boots on the ground. If there's political action taking place, we want to be able to move people there. Use media to move people to wherever action is the most pertinent at that moment, or whichever campaign, for that matter, is most pertinent at that moment.
I had to stop listening to NPR years ago. It just became he said, she said.
Yeah.
I would drive to work when I used to commute substantial distance to work. I would listen to today. Barack Obama said this. John
Hmm.
McCain said this, and it's
Hmm.
like, but wait, that thing John McCain said
Wasn't
isn't.
true.
What's going on? And then they started doing it with Trump, and I was like, Mom out.
Yeah.
And I segued into people like yourself, and I'm eternally grateful. Um, so let me quote you here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Actually, let me ask you this, because you mentioned Florida. Have you heard any movement on the Information Dissemination Act, Bill 1316, where bloggers need to report
Yes.
all of their? So where's that at?
Yes.
I haven't looked recently. I talked about it with
Okay.
Farron Cousins a couple weeks ago, but where are
Yes.
we
Yes.
at?
I didn't know it by the specific name, but so as of last
I'm
week.
amazed I remembered it by
Yeah,
the
no. I
specific
mean,
name.
no. You came out guns blazing with that. I was like, oh, listen, okay. um, it is right now. They have a supermajority in the caucus there in Tallahassee, so Republicans can technically get away with whatever they want. This particular bill was, I don't even think it got out of committee because of how unpopular it was with Republicans.
Hmm.
You had national level Republicans calling out state level Republicans by name and by chamber. They called out the Florida state Republicans for doing what even Republicans thought was both draconian and authoritarian. Now, I say that I say this cautiously. Republicans are very likely, and I'm not sure how many days they have left in this particular session, but they do have some days left. Republicans have a supermajority, and they could potentially get that passed. We discussed it a lot. Hang on. Let me just create the baseline for everyone. This was the legislation that required bloggers to register with the state if they are going to be critics of the administration. In this specific case, it's the Ron DeSantis administration. And so you can imagine if this was from a state representative who presented the bill. You can imagine if you're presenting a bill that is telling bloggers who criticize the administration that they have to register with the state. That's pretty transparent authoritarianism to anyone. And so it didn't play well with the likes of like Lindsey Graham and other Republicans who called for it to be gutted immediately. Even Newt Gingrich, right? Newt Gingrich, you mentioned some years ago, you know, I don't know how long you've been in politics, but Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House around 1994. He is one of the reasons why we have the type of scorched earth politics that we have right now. But even he called this out and said that it should be taken down. And so I don't think it's going anywhere. However, with the supermajority that Republicans have, you never know. They might drop it at any minute.
It was Gingrich that came up with left and right,
Yeah. Well,
and
yeah, absolutely.
And so we've been marching left, right ever since, and I can't stand that. But those are the terms that we use. So okay, so yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to see where that goes. But like I said to Farron Cousins, you know, it's bad when you're on the same side as Newt Gingrich when it comes
Come
to
on.
something. So
Yeah.
is and I'll ask you something else I asked him. Is this a sign that YouTube and what they refer to as bloggers, I really don't think they have a better term. I don't think they know what they're talking about. But YouTubers and podcasters, do you think that the strength is becoming more mighty and that you know it's has the potential to do more damage to a politician or speaking truth to power comes generally from online, not the cable news, like we were saying.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that's what's happening here, and that they're recognizing that and they're fearful?
You know, I know for certain mainstream media, and think of from Fox News to CNN to, Axios, all of these access journalism outlets, um, they have all been copying the changing structure of social media, independent journalism, um, as a matter of trying to, they're not copying the spirit of what we do, because if they were to copy the spirit of what we do, well, we'd have a revolution around the country. But they are copying the tempo, the pace, the type of editing, that kind of thing. Do I think that they're afraid of the YouTube kind of podcasting leftist space? They're afraid of moments, right? But I don't think that they're afraid of it structurally. And this is what I mean. Bree Joy Gray just had one of the most important moments and amazing moments in independent media, if you consider The Hill to be independent still. Maybe not. But that moment went super viral and changed the entire national narrative as it pertains to Republicans not being able to define woke, right? Those are moments that you rarely ever get in mainstream media. You can forget about it because they're too afraid to ask simple follow-up questions. Okay. They're
Yeah,
not even allowed to ask follow-up questions. Now,
yeah,
here's what they're not afraid of. They're not afraid of the structural problem of oversaturating the market. Everybody has a podcast, everybody has a YouTube channel, everybody, and this is not to discourage anyone from getting in the game. It's just to say that it's more difficult. The standard is higher, the barriers of entry, the economies of scale. Like, it's more difficult to get in and to get the leverage that you need. And part of that is strategic, right? If you look at Elon Musk, some of the strategies that he's forwarding and the logic behind what he's trying to do honestly just suggests that he's trying to aid in flooding the market with as many voices as you can, so that none of the voices can really be heard. So it's a balance of the two. They're not afraid because it's kind of like Instagram. Instagram started out giving everybody subscriptions recently. Well, what hell? If everybody on Instagram is doing subscriptions, then who's subscribing to who? Right. And it's kind of that paradigm that we're dealing with in terms of social media, independent media. And that's what the mainstream media, they know that. They're not afraid of that, but they should be rightfully afraid of moments that sneak out of this voice, this crowd of voices. There are moments where stuff jumps out and changes their national narratives. And that's what they have to be wary of.
do you feel like you're being suppressed on social media? Do you think that someone is actively trying to keep you from getting exposure?
Well, I hate talking about that,
Like,
right?
do you feel that way? I don't
Well, I mean,
know.
we
We
have
could talk
evidence
about if
though.
it's true.
So
Oh, okay,
our
okay.
team has evidence of it. Stephen Yoon, not Stephen Yoon, that's Walking Dead. What's Steven's last name?
I
Is a
don't know who you
journalist,
mean.
is a technology journalist who's been on our show so many times. His name escapes me, but he actually took our YouTube channel and saw how many of our, he ran whatever analysis he ran and came back like over 70% of our videos have been flagged. And like, this is a systematic thing to go through and flag your videos to suppress it. The number one flag that they use on YouTube is 18 and older. Right. So now they would have gone through and flagged all of our videos to say that our material is 18 and over. Or in another example, if we talk about Black Lives Matter content, there's so many keywords that YouTube specifically kept a list. And this is the one the research went into. YouTube specifically kept a list of keywords that would flag people for discussing certain amount of content, and it would throttle our algorithmic reach. And then, of course, everyone is suffering. I mean, I think everyone on Twitter should see it by now. the fact that we are literally having our voices crushed while we see the amplification of far right wing voices, thanks to Elon Musk purchase. So it's happening. It still feels like, being a spoiled sport to discuss it. I didn't really complain, when the algorithm was relatively fair and it was easy to get through and cut through and be heard. So I don't do a whole lot of complaining about it now.
Well, okay, so then let's give it some context so it's not just complaining. Can you describe what it's like being on the ground while covering a tragedy like the police killing of that 15-year-old
Yeah.
boy in
Well, there you go.
Gulfport, Mississippi,
Well, yeah.
while, because that's emotional for you as well as you're trying to do your job,
Yeah.
simultaneously feeling like
Yeah.
your
No,
social media is
look
being
at you, man. You
suppressed. Like, why are you even putting it out there if no one's hearing it? How does
l-
that make you feel?
I love the questions that are deeply rooted in research because you know the work I've done.
We're not playing around. Hey,
You're
this isn't
not.
just an art show
This
anymore,
is,
okay?
boy, you doing some journalism here. Listen, I completely forgot about that. So here's another example of having our reach crushed. As I was covering 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan being killed in Gulfport, Mississippi, every single activist, every family member of the victim, the mother, the younger siblings, they all had their Facebook streaming privileges restricted for weeks after the protest, after the murder, during the protest. So during the time where the families were out and the activists were out protesting, Facebook systematically targeted every single one of them and restricted their ability to go live at all. That was frustrating, but it was more like a jinkies moment because no one knew that the other one had been blocked. And so as we were out there literally on the ground, like waving our flags, chanting, and we're talking with each other and we're seeing, and I'm like, I kept asking, are you blocked? And then this person will go to their page, and there it is. Their ability to go live was restricted by Facebook. And we found out that every single family member and every single major organizer had their pages throttled by Facebook specifically. I'm sorry, that's not a coincidence. That literally is telling me that there is a conduit, there is a
Yeah.
connection between local police and Facebook and the ability to silence protests.
Yeah. That's got to make it, the emotional weight has got to be that much heavier though, right? Because it's like what it takes for someone like, hey, I'm not, if I were down there, I wouldn't be reporting on it
Yeah.
because I would feel too close to it. I would feel
Yeah.
too upset about it. This is why I prefer to promote people that do that instead of doing it myself.
That was the moment I called Georgia Fort while I was in Mississippi, and I was like, you know what, I can't even call myself a journalist right now. Like, I don't want to,
Well, because it's
because
more than that.
it's so much more. And you honestly have to, like, I respect compartmentalizing. There's one thing Georgia Fort does amazing, is she's amazing at being able to cover these stories while being able to balance the emotional load that you're talking about, because she talks with mothers and fathers of victims all of the time. And as I was in Mississippi, and I found myself, I'm like, yeah, these are the questions I'm asking. Yes, these are great follow-up questions, but okay, this is how we're going to get the video.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, once you move into that kind of thinking process, then you have to say, okay, I'm an activist now, and I'm not here as a journalist. It's precisely, Matt, because of what you just pointed out.
Yeah, maybe we need a new term like activist journalism or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, um, can I quote you? Do you mind?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so on your one of your podcasts, you do a daily podcast. I listen every day, but um, this stuck with me from last week. Now I'm kind of putting together two things that you were saying in one podcast,
Okay.
where you were talking on Silicon Valley Bank
Hmm.
collapse and the right winger who recently died from an ivermectin overdose.
Yes. Yes.
So you said all that matters is that we have a conservative party, the Republican Party in this country, who is playing on the intentional obtuseness or downright stupidity of their supporters. And you go on to say, we are living in the dumbest times imaginable, and we're dealing with the dumbest breed of people imaginable, the type of people who will no, well, I agree with you. So the type of people who will suspend all logic and embrace the most ridiculous ideas, the most dangerous ideas imaginable because it makes them feel good politically. Now, you tell it like it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, your show is named after you, the Benjamin P. Dixon Show, and the
Yeah.
other one's called Like It or Not.
Like
So,
or not,
like it
yeah.
or not, this is
Yeah, it is
Benjamin
what it
P.
is.
Dixon, right? So,
Yeah.
people are constantly wondering how to debate or reach out to friends and family who have gone down that path, right?
Mm.
Who have either done it willingly or fallen victim to this. But as politics becomes increasingly decisive, is the Republican base totally unreachable?
I think we have to operate as if they are unreachable.
Oh, that's good.
Now, yeah, no, we definitely, and sometimes it's containment, right? There's a contagion that's spreading around this world, and we have to contain it. And if at a later point we can speak to these people again and find that there's some reasonable people amongst them, that they're rational, that maybe they came out of their stupor. The study from CNN, or I forgot which outlet, that showed that 30 days after unplugging from Fox News, most viewers went back to a baseline of moderate kind of thinking.
Mm.
And so I think that I think that right now in this moment, we have to treat them as if they're unreachable, because it is our continued pursuit of outreach that they have weaponized, right? They've turned it on its head. It's the Lucy and Linus paradigm, right? We constantly go out there and say, okay, let's give them a try. They're going to listen to us. We could be reasonable, and then they move the football. They constantly move the football, and so at some point we have to just accept the fact that we're dealing with a group of people who are irrational, and they are using irrationality as a political tool. Now, they're speaking to an audience that simply enjoys, I guess, owning the libs so much that they're willing to die of ivermectin poisoning. Folks, they're not reachable until further notice. That's all.
So do you think their minds can be changed to this point? Like if they're so willing to be lied to and led astray, if that's what's happening, and I think it is, um, I mean, for example, how many times are they going to be called to lead an insurrection where they're the only ones who suffer the consequences of assuming all insurrections will fail? Like
Right.
they're the only ones who go to jail for it, while the people who are telling them to do it are like totally fine.
Right.
Like maybe there's a point of enough is enough, right?
Mm.
Maybe that's when their politics shift, and you can use that to be like, okay, are you're not getting anywhere.
But
Has
see,
your life improved?
and this is why the people like Ron DeSantis, his Surgeon General, Dr. Stella Emanuel. I'm talking specifically in the ivermectin in the pandemic sense. This is why this Robert Kennedy Jr. got to throw him out there, one of the grand wizards of anti-vaxxing during this pandemic. This is why they are focusing so hard, Matt, on rewriting history, right? So that if anyone ever comes up for air from their delusion and they look back at the history books, then the history would be confusing. The history would say the same lies. The history would say that COVID-19 wasn't real, or it was a pandemic. The history would say that ivermectin was a look at Fox News recently. There's a clip of Maria I forget her last name, or her pronouncement, Moritoma or something like that, who basically said that ivermectin was during Fox News to millions of people, said that ivermectin was a good treatment. It was a reasonable treatment for COVID-19. And so they're trying to change the literal base of information, the archive, so that if people ever come to their senses and go back and look, well, history is distorted. So we have to be mindful that even if these people, this propaganda machine is complete. That's what it is. It's complete from top to bottom. And they are becoming ever more efficient at creating that propaganda on the internet, controlling your ability to find specific articles. After a while, you know, it's difficult to find hit pieces or true information on politicians who know how to get their information purged off the internet, right? We're dealing with the level of 1984 that I don't think people
Right.
understand. Like, you can make issues completely disappear in this information age just by paying the right company to do it. And so when you add all of those things together, it's like, what is a person to do when, even if they could break free from the direct propaganda of Fox News, well, the entire national narrative, right? It depends on who you pick. It depends on who you talk to now, Matt, whether or not COVID was real.
Right. And I think people are becoming so suspicious of everything that it's entirely possible that one day people will look back and say, "Well, those books aren't banned anymore, but they were.
Right.
I don't trust them. Why they try and ban them?" And they won't have the energy or motivation to look into it and be like, "Oh, well, whoever banned it was shifty or had some other
That's right. That's right.
ulterior motives." So, okay, so I'm gonna quote you again, okay? Because
All
you
right.
say I love this because like I take notes when I listen to podcasts, and not
Oh,
just
wow.
because I'm gonna interview people, but because I listen for the perspective, right?
Wow. That's
And
what's
this
up.
is a good one. You said, if you allow these politicians to act stupid, they will continue to get away with playing stupid.
Mm,
So, my
mm,
question is every accusation by the Republican Party a confession, or does it just feel that way? And why doesn't it matter anymore? Because once upon a time, the slightest infraction would
mm.
destroy a politician's
That's
reputation.
right.
That
That's right.
does not happen anymore.
Yeah,
So,
man.
why is it that they're always projecting, they're always found guilty, and it just doesn't matter?
Ah, thank you for saying it just like that. It's because they get to add to that total volume of BS. It's the Teflon Don kind of phenomenon. Speaking of Donald Trump specifically, with Donald Trump, the reason he was able to get away with so much for so long was because he threw so much BS at us. It was issue after issue. Suspicion after suspicion, right? Transact, every day he did something that was repugnant, potentially illegal, and would throw the entire news cycle into disarray. It was a strategy. And so conservatives have now seen that, oh, wait a minute. Here's the Achilles heel to for democracy. Here's how you destroy democracy. You simply do not care about the truth, and you simply have no shame, and you have enough influence to get critical mass for people to vote for you, right? So long as you can get enough people to win a primary and to change a national discourse, the conversation, right? You can get away with anything. And we're seeing that right now with Donald Trump. We'll see if he actually gets found guilty of anything of substance, right? But we've seen up until this point, like literally almost to this day, we've seen politicians be able to get away with the most because, well, they learned the trick of you can't keep up with all of my lying. And I think that's one of the number one techniques that they're using right now.
Will Donald Trump get arrested tomorrow?
It looks like they might have some kind of arrest. I'm really I'm gonna be honest with you. I really hope they have the best case that they have ever had in the history of cases, because the last thing that you need to do is arrest him and then go to trial and then he gets off, right?
And has a new
Because that's
superpower,
a
right?
new
Yeah.
superpower. That Teflon Don thing goes to like Super Saiyan 4.
Yeah, it's like Nelson Mandela, Donald Trump, nothing in between, right?
Right.
In some
Exactly.
people's eyes.
Right.
That's what freaks me out, man, is people are just so willing to be like, "See, he was right." And I there's no looking into anything anymore. Um, okay, so let's segue into kind of the random question uh segment or part of the show.
All right.
Who or what inspires you?
Hmm.
Do you have a hero? Is there like one person you go, you know what? Every time I'm at my lowest point, I think of this.
Mm.
Because I mean, I don't. That's why I ask.
I
I mean, you inspire me. People
Oh,
who do what you do inspire me.
who inspire? You know what? Every answer I have is going to sound so corny, but here we go.
Okay.
My children,
That's
my
not corny, man.
my
What are you talking
wife,
about?
my wife,
Right.
um, um, Jesus, um, and Kirk Franklin. No, I don't know. I just threw Kirk Franklin in there. Just he's a gospel artist. You know what motivates me honestly is the work at this point. Like my commitment to my family and my commitment to my particular faith. And I say it like that. You mentioned it earlier, while I'm a Christian, I'm like violently different than these white
Right.
evangelicals, like to the point of we might need to come to blows on some issues. But the model of love, I mean, I got that straight out the Bible. I mean, I grew up with that, and it isn't anything for me to. It's not even difficult for me to connect the model of love that I learned through my faith to my politics. It just makes sense. In terms of like my family, like my family, they're soldiers, man. They're my wife is one of the most resilient people that you would ever meet. And so there was an inflection point in my family life where it just clicked in my head, like the level of commitment that they have and love that they have for me just needed to be met with so much more from me. So now it's just kind of like a driving force. Drive, do better, do better, do better. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that because I was raised Catholic, like Christian faith, and I got a lot of positivity from that. But honestly, it was my mom. It was all
Mm.
her doing, right? Like I give her all the credit for everything that's good about me. Um, so let me ask you this: if you, because you were mentioning your family, and I know that like most of us do our work because, well, most of us do work that our livelihood depends on.
Mm.
I'll put it that way. If you could have any other job and your livelihood and survival didn't depend on it, what would it be? Would you still be doing this? Do you even think about that kind of stuff?
Making comic books with you, Matt.
Hey,
I'm serious. I
there you
would,
go.
either something in the arts.
Yeah,
I would most certainly. Now, keep in mind, I'm like John Wick committed to this stuff that I do, right?
yeah, that's great.
So when I say the creative arts, it's really like, I mean, we've talked extensively, and we had to put the project on hold, but we talked about artwork for the sake of political action,
Yeah,
right? Music, I would definitely get back into music. I love to write and do studio work and record and produce and all those kind of things. I would do it, but again, like my brain is wired differently in these years. Like everything that I do is geared towards how do we move the ball. So I don't know that I would have a different profession. Well, no. I would have a different profession, but the mission would still be the same.
that's funny because you would do something different and somehow it would just keep. It's like
It
just when I
it
thought
comes back,
I
man.
was out, they pull
Bring
me
me
back
back in,
in.
man.
You know what I would do? Um, on my honeymoon, I was on a beach in Mexico, just my wife and I. And there was this young kid who would like come along every day. I never got his name or anything. He would just clean up seaweed off the beach and then roll
Mm.
out. And I was like, that's the job for me.
Ah.
I want to do that.
Okay, now if we're talking about just like, let's say the revolution is complete. We're on, remember the scene of Thanos when he snapped his finger and he went to
Yeah,
the
or
farm on
better yet,
vacation?
like we've got Star Trek Utopia,
Yes,
right?
if we're
Or maybe
there,
even better than
okay.
that. Yeah.
If we are there, I'd play poker for a living.
Oh, okay.
I just,
Cool.
I would just, I'd sit at the poker table all day and play Texas Hold'em all day. If
Oh wow.
everything was good, and my kids are fine, my family fine, and the war has been won, and people are liberated, man, let's just have a cookout and play some cards.
I never played poker.
Yeah.
I always say, like, I work too hard for this money. I'm not gonna gamble it away. And I have an addictive personality, so I know I would just keep losing and losing and losing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's there too.
Uh,
You have to really work around that.
yeah. Um, okay, so, I don't know. I don't wanna ask you stupid questions, but,
No, man, there's no
you
super.
got
I'm
all
enjoying
good
it.
answers.
I'm enjoying it. Anything you got?
Just tell me what's like the most positive aspect of what you do? And you sort of talked about this already. So maybe I should ask you, like, positive or negative, what's one thing you would change about your line of work? And by that I mean having a YouTube show and doing podcasts and your form of journalism.
Hmm. So it's almost like what's the pro and what's the con of
Yeah,
it?
or I mean it could be like, I hate wearing headphones. I think headphones are like the hairnet of podcasting.
Ah,
Some people can rock it and make it look good, but for the most part, it throws off any look I was trying to achieve.
you know, I love it. What I would do differently about you know what? Honestly, it's just there's a couple of technology upgrades that the industry needs, generally speaking. It's really podcasting and doing video work. They've become extremely efficient over the years. And so I can't complain. Like I remember when, you had to go through 13 steps in order to get a video image inside of your computer. I don't know if you remember that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's so easy now, but the easier it becomes, the more spoiled I get. And so now I really just want the microphone and the camera to just be one device, please. Like one really high quality camera with a real high quality microphone already in it, so I don't have to run two different systems. And oh, by the way, can you integrate that into just one computer for me? Can I get a super high quality camera microphone into one computer? Ease. Like it's so many wires. And don't get me wrong, I've been hooking up stuff all of my life, so it's easy. I can get it done. I literally pulled up to the computer, like, and got my camera plugged in maybe 90 seconds before you were ready to go live. So I can't complain. It is easy, but I just feel like we're moving closer and closer to this is some new technologies that we need out there, just new combinations. And I would say that is the most cumbersome part of this is um, it's really just the technical demand. I just feel like we could do better now that we're in this space. Technology is a lot better. The cell phone cameras are a lot better. I've seen cell phone cameras that rival other DSLR cameras. And so if some enterprising company actually could just start making some real combinations that are competitive, so that I could just take one piece of equipment into the field instead of like 13, that'd be great. In terms of what I love about, you're gonna hate me.
Hmm.
I love how easy it is to do this now. you know,
You've refined the process
I refine the process. It's easy. Well,
and you have a crew.
capitalism has refined this process to a point, and I don't give capitalism a lot of credit for anything except for, okay, it has given us the ability to communicate at a semi-professional level with fairly cheap equipment. I know, as a person in the empire, this cheapness comes at the expense of all kinds of atrocities across the globe. I get it, but now we have a baseline in technology where we actually can compete nationally, internationally, and we can get some of those moments that I was telling you about, like what Bree Joy got with the woke moment. Like we can do that with about $1,000 worth of equipment or $500 worth of equipment versus $100,000 of worth of equipment. So I do appreciate the economies of scale coming down over the years. Of course, I do know what that means in terms of like, the cost of labor and the exploitation that comes along with it. But in our case, we're doing our best to do some good with it.
So you do have a crew, though. That's got to take off a lot of the
Well,
pressure,
not
right?
right
Or does
now.
that make it more complicated?
Well, it definitely makes it more complicated. Love my team, love my crew, but
New
when it comes with
dynamics.
when it's taxes and running and documents and everything,
Yeah.
you actually run a real team. Right now, we're on a semi hiatus as we revamp and restructure the show in terms of like our schedule. So in terms of the podcast, I'm a one man show again, but that's fine in terms of like it or not. We have a skeleton crew. So shout out to all of them. Yeah, we have a crew.
I love this show. When I mean, I spent, from day one to present day, it's I it's the only way to start your morning, and now it's like the perfect Friday night. You're gonna love this. The way I close these shows is by recommending a comic book to my guest. Because I assume like a lot of my guests don't read them
Mm.
and probably haven't, but I know you have. Are you?
Hmm.
And let me ask you: are you reading anything currently?
No, no, I
Oh,
don't even
this
want to
is
mention. I
perfect
don't even
then.
want to mention the Batman Scooby Doo mashup that I got at Walmart for my my son. So
Hey,
I read that recently.
oh, okay. Well, I was just recommending to Farron Cousins the DC Comics meets Looney Tunes,
Oh well, there you
which is
go.
probably not too
Okay,
far.
not too far. No,
There's nothing wrong with Batman Scooby Doo, man. That is
I
canon.
enjoyed it
Okay.
actually. I
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. Hey, a comic book's a comic book.
yeah,
Let's not discriminate against comics.
good, good.
Um, okay. So check this out. I'd like to suggest to you the DC Universe by Dwayne McDuffie. Are
Okay.
you familiar with Dwayne McDuffie? He has passed away. He was one of the co-founders of Milestone Entertainment. Do you know
Mm.
Static Shock?
Yeah, static. Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So, did you watch Justice League Unlimited, the animated series of Justice League?
No, no, I
He
didn't.
directed a good bunch of those. He's
What's
he's
his name
in
again?
Dwayne McDuffie, and in my opinion, he's why Justice League was so good. And he did a lot to. I mean, Milestone did everything to introduce characters that weren't just white American males,
Mm,
right? And so he did a handful of stories for DC Comics doing their mainstream stuff. And so there's a brand new hardback collection out. It's not too
mm,
expensive, but if you want to wait, it's bound to be in paperback sooner or later, and it'll be that much more affordable. It is called The DC Universe by Dwayne McDuffie. I recommend everyone check this out. I know we have some people in the chat who are going to love this recommendation. I'm sure they know about this. In terms of Milestone, it's like their 30th anniversary right now. So they've got all kinds of stuff coming out through DC Comics.
nice.
And so you can get like their anniversary edition. You can get all kinds. They're putting all kinds of new collections out. So it's totally worth reading, and it breaks away from the mainstream in a way that's refreshing, but also like the quality of art and storytelling cannot be beat. And Dwayne McDuffie was one of the best, and it was one of those tragic losses
Mm,
to the industry and the entire planet.
mm.
Um, so I don't want to take up your whole night, man. I really
I,
appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Is there
pleasure.
anything else that you want to plug?
No, man. I just want to thank you for having me, and
Sure.
the thank you for making me look so buff on the on
Oh
the
yeah.
picture.
Well,
Appreciate the love.
these are all done, and it's funny because these are all done in the style of Bruce Timm, who he did the Justice League and the DC animated stuff like
Nice,
Batman and Justice League and Superman. So this is all in their style, and I'm drawing everyone this way
nice.
so
I
that
love it.
I'll be able to take not the headshot, but I'll be able to take all the poses and put them into one group image.
Very
So I,
nice.
I did
Very nice.
one fairly recently of 102 different people, and that was a challenge because I had to draw them all in one take. Basically, I
Oh
did it
wow.
over the course of several weeks, but it was one illustration. So this is going to be individual illustrations along with the interview, and then I'll compile them in one group image. And I just had Jason Miles on from this
Yes,
Revolution.
yes. I have to. Yeah. I hope they're doing well. I haven't talked to them in a while.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they're doing good. And
Good.
that was a
Good.
great discussion with him. And we got Jessica Burbank coming up next week, and
Nice.
and
You're
Re-
just on the move, man.
Rebecca Azor is on the hook.
Really? All right.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I'm booked up. This is nuts because I'm like asking people if they want to come on, and I'm like, is it fair to ask them when I'm 4 weeks out? I don't know. So I'm trying to
No,
trying
no,
to
man.
balance it.
Listen, listen, and you handled this perfectly. And
Okay,
ask David. Like, recently it's been really hard to get me behind the camera. And shout out to everyone in the chat room, to all the Roller Dragon, Nat A, everybody I see. I just want to say shout out to all of them because they understand how hard it has been to get me behind the camera and the way you handled it and followed up. Thank you for doing it that way. So good. That's why I
absolutely.
think everyone is showing up. You're doing a great job, man.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm gonna take that.
There you go.
Well. We're gonna put all the links to your stuff in the chat, or in the description of this podcast. I'm
Awesome.
gonna make sure to retweet it. I'm gonna do clips. We're gonna put those out over the course of the week. So everyone should check me out on Twitter at the Letterhack. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out the community tab. I'm going to be putting all kinds of updates, schedules, and notifications for future interviews up there. Ben, it was fantastic having you on here. Thank you
Hey,
so
thanks,
much.
man.
I actually can't thank you enough. It's a big deal because you, like I said, you've always been really supportive of me, and that's good because that's a win. But I'm supporting people like you, so it's a win-win.
Yes,
So
sir. It's a win-win. It is an honor, and man, I look forward to after this current sabbatical that I'm on. One of these days, we're going to get together. We're going to work together. We're going to get some work out.
I mean, everyone, you guys stay tuned for that. Thanks again, and we'll
Absolutely.
see you next
Take
Monday.
care.